The late morning sun poured down over the Cooper's ranch outside Austin, Texas, shimmering on the wide fields of dry grass and the wooden fences that marked the edge of their 10-acre property. From the porch, Megan Cooper could hear her daughter Lily laughing as she threw a tennis ball across the yard. The sound was followed by the pounding of heavy paws on the dirt. Duke, their massive gray Great Dane, sprinted after the ball with surprising grace for his size, skidding in the dust before scooping it up and trotting back with his head held high. To a stranger passing by on the county road, it would have looked like nothing more than a girl playing fetch with her dog on a quiet weekday morning. But Megan knew the scene carried a weight far deeper than it appeared. Duke wasn't just a dog. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a military working dog alongside her late husband, Sergeant Daniel Cooper. When Daniel was fatally wounded during his last deployment, he left instructions ensuring Duke would retire with the family. Megan still remembered the day the Marines delivered the folded flag, her husband's few belongings, and Duke's transfer papers. The animal had arrived with scars both visible and unseen, a limp in his back leg, a haunted look in his eyes when thunder rolled across the hills, but he had also brought with him a piece of Daniel's spirit. Over time, Duke had become more than a guardian. He had become a bridge between the man they had lost and the life they were learning to live without him. On the lawn, Lily waved the ball high above her head, daring Duke to jump. He sat instead, tail sweeping the dust, eyes fixed on her with soldierly patience until she laughed and tossed it again. Megan smiled faintly at the sight. Despite everything, there were still moments of normal childhood joy. She glanced at her watch and called out through the open kitchen window, "Lily, time to get ready for school." The girl scooped up the ball and jogged back toward the porch, Duke falling into step beside her like a shadow that would never leave. Megan bent down to scratch behind the dog's ears, whispering as she always did, "Keep an eye on things, soldier." Duke responded with a low chuff, his gaze shifting instinctively to the distant tree line, alert even in the stillness of the Texas morning. Duke's presence in their lives had never been an accident. Before he became the family's watchful companion, he had been Sergeant Daniel Cooper's partner in Afghanistan, trained to detect explosives and protect soldiers on missions that often blurred the line between survival and catastrophe. Megan remembered the stories Daniel told in pieces, never in full detail, but always with pride in the dog's intelligence and instincts. On one mission, Duke had reportedly signaled just seconds before a roadside bomb was discovered, giving the platoon enough time to reroute and save lives. Daniel used to joke that Duke wasn't just part of the team, he was the team's guardian angel. When Daniel didn't return from his final deployment, the Marines honored his request to send Duke home. Megan could still recall the knock on the door that changed everything. 2 officers in uniform standing solemnly on the porch, a folded flag in their hands, and Duke's transfer papers tucked neatly inside a folder. Behind them stood the dog himself, taller than Lily and scarred from shrapnel, his eyes scanning the yard as if still on patrol. Megan had knelt down, tears blurring her vision, and whispered, "Welcome home, soldier." From that moment, he was more than a reminder of what they had lost. He was a piece of Daniel entrusted to them. The adjustment, however, had not been easy. Duke startled at fireworks on the 4th of July, paced restlessly during thunderstorms, and bristled at every unexpected noise. Megan tried calming techniques she had read about, but it was Lily who truly broke through. The girl, only 10 when Duke arrived, began sitting quietly beside him with a book in her lap, reading aloud until his trembling slowed. Sometimes she draped a blanket over his massive back, whispering, "You're safe now," until he finally settled. Slowly, the haunted look in his eyes softened, replaced by something warmer when he was near her. Now, 2 years later, the bond between them was unshakable. Lily no longer saw Duke as the broken warrior who had limped into their lives. She saw him as her best friend, a companion who listened without judgment and guarded her without fail. Duke, for his part, never let her out of his sight for long. Megan often found them in the evenings sprawled on the living room floor, Lily sketching in her notebook while Duke lay with his head across her legs, content in the kind of peace he had fought so hard to find. In those quiet moments, Megan felt Daniel's presence strongest, as if through Duke's loyalty and Lily's patience, the family he left behind was being stitched back together. By 8 o'clock, the house hummed with its usual weekday rhythm. Megan poured coffee into her travel mug, reminding Lily to grab her backpack and lunchbox while Duke stationed himself near the front door, posture tall, ears pricked. It had become his morning ritual to watch them leave, as if he were both chauffeur and sentry. Lily bent down to hug him before heading out. "Don't worry, Duke, we'll be back before you know it." The dog's tail swept once across the hardwood floor, but his eyes stayed fixed on the driveway beyond the glass. The SUV crunched over gravel as Megan backed down the long lane that cut through their property, dust rising in the morning light. The ranch stretched out behind them, wide and quiet, the kind of place Megan had chosen for its privacy and safety. She often told herself it was the best gift she could give Lily, space to grow without constant reminders of the city or neighbors who might be uneasy about Duke's size. Still, she had learned that isolation carried its own edge. Some evenings, when the wind shifted through the oaks, the silence pressed a little too hard, and she wondered if the choice had been as comforting as she wanted to believe. From the window, Duke tracked the SUV until it disappeared around the bend. His breath fogged the glass for a moment before he turned and began a slow circuit of the house. It wasn't just habit, it was vigilance. He padded through the kitchen, into the hallway, stopping at each window to scan the tree line. Something had unsettled him since dawn, a restlessness Megan had mistaken for leftover energy from play. But Duke's instincts ran deeper than simple nerves. He paused at the back sliding door, ears twitching, gaze locked on a patch of woods beyond the fence. Nothing moved, but he stayed there longer than usual, body tense, until a bird took flight and broke the stillness. Only then did he resume his patrol, nails clicking softly against the tile, the house once again echoing with its guardian's steady watch. 3 miles away, behind the shell of an abandoned truck stop, a black Chevy van idled in the shade of a collapsed awning. The engine ticked faintly as four men hunched over a laptop balanced on a plastic crate. Satellite images of the Cooper Ranch glowed on the screen, the outlines of the house and surrounding fields clear enough to measure in yards. "It's perfect," Alvarez said, tapping the trackpad. His voice carried the weight of command, calm but edged with impatience. "No close neighbors, long driveway, nobody will hear a thing." Beside him, Leon leaned back, chewing on a toothpick, his brow furrowed. "What about that dog?" "I've seen the pictures, thing looks like a horse." Alvarez waved him off. "It's just a family pet, scare it off if you have to, but don't shoot unless absolutely necessary. Gunfire attracts attention." We stay quiet. The other two men, Carlos and Diego, exchanged a look but said nothing. They had been on enough runs to know Alvarez's word was final. What mattered was the woman, Megan Cooper. As a senior accountant at First National, she had direct access to codes that could move money through channels their cartel needed. Those codes were the real prize, and her daughter was the leverage. Alvarez zoomed in on the image of the ranch house, his finger tracing the long driveway to the front porch. "We take the girl after school. Bring her here first, then to the house. The mother will do exactly what we tell her once she sees her child in danger." He closed the laptop with a snap. Simple, clean, no mistakes. The men nodded, but unease lingered in the cramped van. They had watched Megan long enough to know her routines, but the dog was the one variable they hadn't figured out. Still, Alvarez's confidence carried them, and soon the van pulled out of the lot, tires crunching over broken asphalt. The plan was in motion, the kind of operation they believed would unfold smoothly. What they didn't realize, what they couldn't know, was that the gray giant waiting at the ranch wasn't a pet at all. He was a soldier, still trained to meet threats with precision, and he had already sensed that danger was coming. The final bell rang, releasing a wave of chatter and footsteps into the warm Texas afternoon. Lily Cooper slung her backpack over one shoulder and walked out with her best friend, Hannah. They talked about weekend plans, giggling as they weaved through clusters of students heading toward the pickup lane. Hannah's mom pulled up first, honking lightly. "See you tomorrow," Hannah called, hopping into the car. Lily waved, then sat down on a bench near the school's flagpole to wait for her mom. Minutes ticked by, 3:35, 3:40. Megan was rarely late. When Lily's phone buzzed, she felt a jolt of relief until she read the message. "Running late at work. Walk home, sweetie. Beautiful day for it." Lily frowned. Her mother never asked her to walk without planning it ahead of time. And beautiful day for it, that didn't sound like Mom. Her pulse quickened. She typed back quickly, "What's the password?" It was a rule her father had set before his last deployment. If something felt wrong, ask for the family's code word. The reply came almost instantly. "Don't be silly, just start walking." That was all Lily needed to know. Whoever had her mother's phone wasn't her mother. She shoved the device back into her pocket, heart hammering, and hurried toward the main office doors. At the same time, she dialed Mrs. Whitaker, their elderly neighbor, the first name on her emergency contact list. The phone rang, but before she could get inside, an arm clamped over her mouth. She tried to scream, but the sound was smothered against a gloved hand. Her feet left the ground as she was lifted and dragged toward the far end of the parking lot where a black Chevy van sat in the shadow of the gym. She thrashed wildly, her sneakers scraping the pavement, but her captor was stronger. "Stop fighting," a voice hissed in accented English. "We don't want to hurt you." Tears blurred her eyes. She remembered her father's words, noticed details. "Stay calm, survive." Through her fear, she focused. The van smelled of cigarettes and gun oil. The men spoke Spanish mixed with English. She felt the cold bite of zip ties tighten around her wrists. Just before they shoved her inside, she twisted her wrist and let the small silver charm bracelet slip free, clattering softly to the ground near the bench where she had been waiting. The van doors slammed shut. The engine roared. As it sped away from the school, Lily pressed her eyes shut and prayed not for herself, but for her mom and for Duke, who didn't yet know how much his family needed him. At 3:15, Megan's SUV turned into the long gravel driveway, the tires crunching as the ranch house came into view. She was already thinking about dinner and the errands she had to run the next morning when two figures emerged from the tree line behind her. Before she could react, one pressed a pistol against her back as she stepped out of the car. "Unlock the door," a man ordered in clipped English, his breath hot against her ear. Megan's keys trembled in her hand as she obeyed, every nerve screaming at her to run, but she forced herself to stay calm. Duke's training had rubbed off on her in small ways. She knew sudden moves could trigger violence. The front door swung open and Alvarez stepped from the kitchen where he had been waiting. He smiled thinly. "Welcome home, Mrs. Cooper. Call your daughter. Tell her you're running late. She'll walk home." Megan's chest tightened. "Please," she whispered, "leave her out of this. I'll give you whatever you want." "That's not how this works," Alvarez replied, holding out her phone. "Text her, now." From the staircase above, Duke crouched low, muscles coiled, eyes locked on the intruders. Every instinct screamed at him to attack, but years of training held him in place. A wrong move could get Megan killed. He forced himself to wait, steady breaths shuddering through his chest as he tracked every motion below. Megan's thumbs moved across the screen, typing the message Alvarez dictated. She deliberately kept her face blank, but inside her mind raced. Lily would know. Daniel had drilled it into both of them. "If you're in trouble, ask for the password." Sure enough, moments later the phone buzzed with Lily's reply. Megan almost smiled through her fear. "Clever girl." "What password?" Alvarez barked, snatching the phone. He typed a curt response himself, ignoring Megan's attempt to explain. Then he dropped the device on the counter. "Now we wait." The men fanned out across the living room, weapons drawn, settling in like predators around a cage. Megan's hands curled into fists at her sides. Her heart pounded, but she forced her breathing steady. She glanced once toward the staircase. For the briefest moment, she caught sight of Duke's gray silhouette above, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She didn't speak, but her gaze told him everything. "Wait, watch, be ready." Duke pressed closer to the railing, ears pricked, body taut with controlled fury. The enemy was inside his territory now, and his mission had never been clearer. The van's tires crunched over gravel as it swung into the Cooper driveway. From his perch at the top of the stairs, Duke heard the sliding door slam and caught the muffled cry of a child. His ears shot forward. "Lily." The sound jolted through him like electricity, every muscle stiffening as he leaned over the railing to watch. Two men dragged her through the doorway, her wrists bound, tape pulled hastily from her mouth. "Mom," she screamed, stumbling as they shoved her into the living room. "Are you okay?" Megan lunged forward but was yanked back by Carlos's grip on her arm. "I'm fine, baby," she said quickly, forcing her voice to steady though her whole body shook. "It's going to be okay." Alvarez stepped forward, satisfaction flickering in his eyes. "Now we have what we need. Sit her down." Lily was forced into a chair, her small frame dwarfed by the men looming around her. Alvarez leaned close to Megan, his tone sharp. "The codes. You're going to help us move some money, Mrs. Cooper. If you cooperate, maybe everyone walks away." Megan's fists tightened at her sides, nails digging into her palms. "And if I don't, then the girl pays first," Alvarez said simply, his eyes cold. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the room. Megan's gaze darted to her daughter, then flicked upward. Duke's shadow shifted on the staircase. She forced herself not to react, not to give away his position. Lily's breath came in ragged gasps, but she remembered her father's lessons. Don't freeze, don't panic. Her eyes dropped to the silver bracelet missing from her wrist, the one she had dropped outside the school. Maybe someone had seen it. Maybe help was coming. For now, she had to hold on. Duke's chest rumbled with a low growl that only Megan could hear. The sound vibrated through the air like a storm gathering on the horizon. She closed her eyes for half a second, whispering in her mind the same words she said every morning. Keep an eye on things, soldier. The men didn't notice. They were too focused on Megan, too sure of their control. Alvarez pressed a gun flat against the table for emphasis, its cold metal gleaming under the light. Decide quickly, Mrs. Cooper. We don't have all day. From the shadows above, Duke lowered his head, body trembling with the need to move. The time for waiting was nearly over. The room was tense, thick with the scent of sweat and gun oil. Alvarez leaned forward, his pistol glinting under the lamp as he repeated his demand. The codes, now. That was the moment Duke struck. He launched from the staircase like a gray missile, 170 pounds of muscle and fury. His paws hit Carlos first, the man closest to Lily, knocking him sideways with the force of a linebacker's tackle. Carlos's gun skidded across the hardwood as Duke's jaws clamped down on his forearm, a bone-jarring crunch followed by a howl of pain. Lily slipped free, scrambling toward her mother. "Get it off him," Diego shouted, fumbling for his weapon, but Megan moved too. The instant Carlos went down, she lunged for the pistol that had clattered across the floor. With one swift motion, she kicked it behind her and grabbed Lily, pulling her tight against her chest. Her free hand shot out toward the wall, slamming down the breaker switch. The lights snapped off, plunging the house into darkness. Chaos exploded, the men cursed, stumbling over furniture. A gun fired once, the flash lighting the room for a split second before Duke barreled into Diego. His jaws locked on the man's wrist, forcing the weapon loose with a scream. In the strobing light of muzzle flash, his massive frame moved with the precision of a soldier who had never forgotten his training. Alvarez swung blindly toward the sound, shouting for the others to regroup, but Duke was faster. He lunged again, hitting Alvarez square in the chest. The gun tumbled from his grip as he crashed to the floor, air blasting out of his lungs. Duke stood over him, lips peeled back, growl rolling like thunder in the dark. The two remaining men broke. One bolted through the front door, slamming into the night air. The other dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, hands raised. "No more, no more," he cried. Megan's breathing was ragged, her arms still wrapped tight around Lily. In the dim glow from the kitchen window, she leveled the gun she had retrieved. "Face down, hands where I can see them." Her voice was steady now, edged with fury. On the floor, Alvarez writhed beneath Duke's weight, clutching his mangled wrist. His arrogance was gone, replaced by the raw fear of a man who realized too late he had underestimated his enemy. Duke's growl deepened, vibrating through the boards beneath them, a warning that he was ready to strike again if anyone moved. For the first time that night, the Coopers weren't the prey. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every second until red and blue lights washed across the ranch yard. The gunfire and shouts had already drawn attention. Mrs. Whittaker, their neighbor down the road, had called 911 the moment Lily's broken call reached her earlier. Now the cavalry was here. Megan kept the pistol steady as Lily clung to her waist, both of them pressed behind the kitchen counter. Duke remained planted over Alvarez, teeth bared inches from the man's throat. The once confident cartel leader now whimpered, his mangled wrist pressed against his chest as he lay pinned to the floor. The front door burst open. Deputies in brown uniforms poured inside, weapons raised, followed by agents in plain clothes with FBI vests. "Drop your weapons, hands in the air," they barked. The one man who had surrendered earlier raised his arms higher, lying flat on the floor. Another stumbled back inside only to be tackled by two officers on the porch. Within seconds, the living room was flooded with law enforcement, the chaos dissolving into firm commands and the rattle of handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're safe now," one deputy assured Megan, gently taking the pistol from her trembling hand. He crouched down to eye level with Lily. "You're safe too, sweetheart," Lily nodded, though her eyes never left Duke. The Great Dane's chest still heaved with adrenaline, but when Megan placed a hand on his back and whispered, "It's okay, soldier." "Stand down," he let out a long, rumbling breath. Slowly, he eased off Alvarez, retreating to Megan's side, his body still coiled but his mission complete. Paramedics rushed in, checking Lily's wrists where the zip ties had bitten into her skin and examining Megan for bruises. An FBI agent knelt beside Alvarez, snapping on cuffs while another read him his rights. The cartel leader glared up at the towering dog, spitting words thick with pain. "We didn't know, nobody told us you had a war dog." The agent glanced toward Duke, then back at Alvarez with a tight smile. "That's what we call bad intel." As the last of the intruders were hauled out in shackles, Megan sank onto the couch, pulling Lily into her lap. Tears streaked her cheeks as she whispered into her daughter's hair, we're safe because of him." Lily turned, wrapping her arms around Duke's massive neck. He pressed his head against her chest, eyes closing, a low whine vibrating through him as if to say he was finally relieved too. The days that followed felt unreal, as if Megan and Lily were moving through someone else's life. The ranch was quiet again, yet every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows made Megan tense. Law enforcement officers came and went, collecting evidence, walking them through statements, assuring them that Alvarez and his crew would not be back. The FBI promised the men would face federal charges connected to cartel activity. Still, Megan checked the locks 3 times before bed. The agency also arranged for a full security upgrade on the property. Motion sensor lights lined the driveway, cameras were installed at every entrance, and reinforced locks replaced the old ones on doors and windows. Megan accepted it all with gratitude, though she knew none of it gave her the same peace as the sight of Duke sprawled by the front door each night, his ears twitching at every sound. Lily struggled the most. Some nights she woke crying, memories of the van and the men's voices rushing back. She clutched Duke until her breathing slowed. With the help of a counselor recommended by the school, she began to process the fear piece by piece. "It's okay to be scared," the counselor told her gently. "What matters is that you survived and you were brave." Lily nodded, her hand never leaving Duke's fur. Megan found her own healing in small routines. Cooking breakfast, driving Lily to school, sitting on the porch in the evenings while Duke patrolled the yard. Yet grief and gratitude often collided inside her. She would catch herself staring at the folded flag in the living room and whisper, "Daniel, you were right to trust him." He saved us. Duke changed too. Since the attack, he had grown more vigilant, refusing to let Lily out of his sight. But there was something calmer in his eyes when she hugged him, as if the battle he fought that night had given him closure. He had fulfilled the mission Daniel left him, and now his loyalty carried not only the weight of duty but the warmth of family. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles and offers to help, their voices hushed with sympathy. Most of them had never truly noticed the big gray dog beyond the fence before. Now they spoke of him with respect, calling him a hero. Lily simply smiled and said, "He's not just a hero. He's ours." A month after the night that changed everything, Lily stood at the front of her classroom clutching a poster board filled with photos. Her classmates fidgeted in their seats, buzzing with anticipation. Career Day was usually about parents showing off jobs, firefighters, nurses, accountants, but Lily had insisted she wanted to present something different. At her side sat Duke, his enormous frame folded neatly onto the rug, wearing only a plain collar. He looked more like a statue than a pet, his brown eyes sweeping the room with calm vigilance. "This is Duke," Lily began, her voice wavering only slightly. "Some people think that when military dogs retire, they stop being warriors. But that's not true, they just find new missions." She swallowed hard, then lifted her chin. "Duke was my dad's partner when he served in Afghanistan. He helped save soldiers by finding explosives before they went off. When my dad didn't come home, Duke came to live with us. And a few weeks ago, when some very bad men tried to hurt us, Duke protected my mom and me." A hush settled over the room. Even the rowdy boys in the back leaned forward, wide-eyed. Lily pointed to a photo of Duke in tactical gear next to her father. "He's not just a pet, he's family. And he's a hero." Just then, a loud pop echoed from the hallway. A balloon from another class had burst. Several kids squealed. Duke's ears shot up, his body tensing, a low growl rumbling from his chest. For a heartbeat, Megan, watching from the back, froze. The old wound of PTSD flickered in his reaction, but then Lily reached down, resting her small hand on his head. "It's okay, Duke, you're safe," she whispered. The growl faded. His muscles relaxed. He exhaled slowly, pressing against her legs like a child leaning into comfort. The class erupted in murmurs of awe. One boy whispered, "That's the coolest dog I've ever seen." The teacher's eyes glistened as she dabbed at the corner of her glasses. "Thank you, Lily," she said softly. "And thank you, Duke, for your service." As the presentation ended, Duke remained seated by Lily's side, watchful but calm. It wasn't just a lesson about jobs or careers. It was about courage, loyalty, and healing. Megan felt tears sting her eyes as she realized the truth. Lily hadn't just told her class about Duke. She had shown them how love could steady even the deepest scars. That evening, as the sun slipped low over the Texas hills, Megan, Lily, and Duke gathered on the porch. The sky burned with shades of orange and violet, the kind of sunset Daniel used to call a soldier's reward. Lily curled up on the swing with a book, her legs tucked beneath her, while Duke lay stretched across the wooden planks at her feet. His eyes scanned the horizon, ears flicking at every sound, but there was a calmness in his body that hadn't been there months before. Megan held a mug of tea, the steam curling upward as she watched her daughter lean over to stroke Duke's broad head. You know, she said quietly, your dad would be so proud of both of you, proud of how you've taken care of each other. Lily smiled faintly. I think Duke misses him. Sometimes I do too. But when I look at Duke, it feels like a part of Dad is still here. Megan swallowed hard, blinking back tears. She reached down and scratched behind Duke's ears, whispering, Thank you for keeping your promise to him. Duke's tail thumped softly, and he pressed his muzzle against Lily's knee as if agreeing. Inside, the folded flag still rested on the mantel, beside a framed photo of Daniel and Duke taken before their last deployment. Megan had looked at it 1,000 times, but tonight she saw it differently. Not just as a reminder of loss, but as proof of a legacy carried forward, one soldier's loyalty living on in another's fur and bone, guarding the family that mattered most. As the stars began to appear, Lily closed her book and leaned against her mom. You know what Dad used to say, the bravest thing a soldier can do is come home and learn to live in peace. I think that's what Duke has done. He fought for us once, and then he learned how to just be ours. Megan kissed the top of her daughter's head, her heart heavy and full all at once. Yes, she whispered. That's exactly what he's done. The porch fell quiet except for the soft hum of crickets and the steady rhythm of Duke's breathing. In that moment, they weren't just survivors of a terrifying night. They were a family, whole, resilient, and bound together by love stronger than fear. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone who believes in loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and their dogs. Your support helps us bring more powerful true-to-life stories to light.